And we're off and running on the Krueg Show. Hope everybody's having a great day. It is April the 17th, about 15 minutes behind schedule. 8:45 on the West Coast, 11:45 on the East Coast. Welcome to the Krueg Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go get the brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon and Mary and tell them that Larry Krueger sent you. We're also brought to you by Marin Auto Glass, marinautoglass.com, 415-883-3030. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, and you can check that link in the description. Use the promo code Krueg, Krueg, and they will match you up to your first $100. And we're also brought to you by our good friends at our sports cards and collectibles sponsor, which I don't have the read in front of me, but Sharp Corners down on the peninsula, down in the Monterey Peninsula, and give Anthony Catania a call. It's a great company if you're like sports cards or sports collectibles. Phenomenal company. Well, joining us tonight on the show, one of my favorite guys from 95.7, Sterling Bennett, does a great job covering the Niners, the Warriors, running things behind the scenes at 95.7 The Game, and he's with us on the Krueg Show. What's up, Sterling? How are you, man?
I'm doing great. What is it, 8:47 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon? Warriors are out of the playoffs, lost to the Kings last night, and I'm sure your eyes, like mine, are all geared towards next Thursday. I think it's in Detroit, Michigan for round one of the NFL draft, and I cannot wait to talk draft with you today, Larry.
Oh, man, I'm fired up, and, it's like there's many times that, we're sitting there talking ball, Niner ball, either in mini camp, training camp. There's some hot days down in Santa Clara, and you've been down there for a lot of it, doing a great job. And we're dual streaming tonight. Of course, the Krueg Show has whatever we have, 41,000 subs or whatever it's at. But Sterling's got a YouTube channel as well, and I would love it if all you guys liked and subscribe over here, and then go over to his channel and like and subscribe over there. Tell people about your channel, Sterling, and when you started it and how it's going for you.
Yeah, it was off and on last year, but this year, even last OTAs, dove right into everything Niner related. Just released, in my own quotes, the most accurate Niners mock draft you're going to see out there on the web. I believe it was on Monday, so it's brand new, it's fresh. 10 picks now, all 7 rounds. Again, what I'm calling the most accurate Niners mock draft out there on the web currently, but you can go there. 49ers Access is the channel name, and check it out.
Well, and I encourage everybody to check out 95.7's draft coverage. Tell people what you got cooking on draft night. It's the 25th, so it's a week from Thursday. And what exactly are you guys gonna be doing on draft night on 95.7?
We're gonna have starting from 6 p.m. all the way until 10 p.m. entire first round coverage. Myself, Evan Giddings, and Mark Grandy gonna buck and weave and jive and weave all the way through the first round pick, number 1 through 32. San Francisco picks at 31 right now, so it might be a long time until we talk Niners, but we'll dive into every single pick, break every single pick down, and hopefully we're talking grand slam for the Niners when the night's over with.
Are you just doing Thursday, or are you guys doing Friday, Saturday as well?
Saturday and Sunday are off the table. I want to sit at home, drink my coffee, and watch the draft myself, so just Thursday night.
Just Thursday night. Well, good stuff. Check out Sterling and the boys over at 95.7 on Thursday night, day 1 of the 2024 NFL draft. And I'm sure you guys will do some great stuff, and it will be fantastic. One of the kind of, the subplot last year around the draft was a lot about, Trey Lance and would he be dealt, and Sam Darnold, or was Darnold maybe after the draft, but it was definitely Trey Lance, Brock Purdy. Is Purdy coming back? Is he going to be healthy? Is Lance going to be in the mix? Are they going to share time? Are they going to compete in camp? How's it going to shake out on draft day? Well, there was rumors of trades. I was predicting that they would trade Trey Lance. I ultimately was proven incorrect because they didn't trade Trey Lance, but then I felt like I was vindicated after it came out that kind of they shopped him the entire draft and they just couldn't get their price. Ultimately, we knew they would trade Trey Lance in August, right before the start of the season, to the Dallas Cowboys for a 4th-round pick in this year's draft, one of their, I believe, 10 or 11 picks that they have this year. This year, the subplot is not around Trey Lance or Brock Purdy. It's really around Brandon Aiyuk. And are the Niners going to trade Aiyuk with the contract extension for Brock Purdy looming next year? He's going to go from $1 million to maybe $50 million. That's hard to believe, but it could happen. And that means that the Niners are going to have to somehow shake up their roster and probably eliminate some big time players. And one of the, players that could be eliminated is Brandon Aiyuk. Now, I'm not rooting for it. Who would, right? He's their best receiver. He's their most complete receiver. But there's a lot of speculation about Aiyuk being moved. Before we get into, I'm going to play this cut from Chase Sr. from earlier today, but because he's talking about Aiyuk. But in your most accurate mock draft, who did you have the Niners taking at 31?
I think the way the board fell on Pro Football Network was Graham Barton. Now, I'm someone who believes that Barton will probably not be there at 31. He'll probably go in the 20s. I think Green Bay's a great spot for him, if not earlier in the draft. But I think the consensus mock that I've been seeing everywhere is, a right tackle, whether it's Jordan Morgan. I'm someone who would have the balls to go and trade up for Amarius Mims, which I think fans don't want to hear. But I do think that at this moment, Jordan Morgan seems to be the most consensus pick. Although those short arms tend to just ward people off and say 32 and 7/8 inches, they're 1/8 of an inch off of 33. Yikes. But right now, for my mock draft on Monday, I had Graham Barton if he's at 31, which I don't think he will be, but the draft can be tricky sometimes. So we shall see.
Yeah, Graham Barton, is he a center? Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? He seems to be a really good prospect, and we're going to find out exactly how the Niners have these guys ranked. And as far as Jordan Morgan, Joe Staley didn't have, vines for arms. He didn't have super long arms, and Joe Staley had a really, really good career. So I don't know if it's the end all be all.
Right.
But there are people that feel like Jordan Morgan's kind of a low end guy and maybe a guard at the next level. And want to see the Niners take a bigger swing.
Right.
Let's talk about Aiyuk for a second, because there are rumors that the Steelers want to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. Now, there was rumors that the Jaguars wanted to trade for Brandon Aiyuk, but it seems to be that the persistent rumor is that won't go away is that the Steelers have interest. I want to share the screen here and show you this little tweet from my good friend Chase Sr., who we have on Fridays. And Chase had a pretty good little video today. Here it is. Let me rewind it, and we'll let everybody hear Chase Sr.'s thoughts on this. This is kind of interesting. Chase Sr. from Chat Sports. He covers the Niners and the Eagles. Here he is talking a little bit about the latest on Brandon Aiyuk and what he's hearing. He's based in Dallas, but what he's hearing coming out of Pittsburgh.
Things continue to remain interesting on the Brandon Aiyuk front. Let's get to the latest. I'm Chase Sr., host of the 49ers Report, and if you want daily Niners coverage, give me a follow and subscribe. So yesterday, Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network reported that the 49ers are not entertaining calls on a Brandon Aiyuk trade, but that is not the sentiment in Pittsburgh, as the Steelers continue to be one of the most interested and reported teams who really want to pull off a Brandon Aiyuk trade. General manager Omar Khan is reportedly desperate to add a top-flight wide receiver, and the Steelers, according to reports, are vigorously pursuing an Aiyuk trade. And also, this is what the publication All Steelers reported today, that while nothing is imminent, the Steelers would be surprised if an Aiyuk trade did not happen. Of note here, Pittsburgh currently has the 20th overall pick in the draft. The Niners could look at that as equal value back for an Aiyuk deal to draft a wide receiver and get an offensive lineman. Things continue to remain interesting on the
very interesting stuff there from Chase Sr. Now, I don't know how credible All Steelers is. I was told that it was kind of like a YouTube guy who covers the Steelers. What do you make of that? What do you make of that little report there from Chase Sr.? Do you believe that, the Niners weren't going to trade Trey Lance until he was traded, and It's like in a lot of ways, they're like not going to trade. They're not going to trade Brandon Aiyuk until he's traded. I'm not sure what exactly to make of it. What do you think?
I think the Lance trade was one.
For some reason, you're now coming through the speaker here. Hold on, let me see. I'm not sure exactly why.
I know your mic also sounds different in my ear as well.
Yeah, hold on, everybody.
It's all about wiggling the cables, making sure everything's plugged in.
One second.
I got you there.
So, now here we are. We're back.
There we go. Back to the.
But go ahead. What do you make of what Chase said there?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the differences between the Trey Lance trade and the Brandon Aiyuk trade, because you brought him up, the Niners were listening and kind of wanting to trade Trey Lance because they had an answer behind him. Whereas I don't really care what Pittsburgh thinks is going to happen. Like, you can think all you want that, we'll be shocked if a trade doesn't happen with San Francisco, but the Niners have openly said they want to keep Aiyuk around. Now, is that just, them speaking out of their behind? Who knows? But it feels like that the Niners, like they always do, will wait until after the first round. Aiyuk's leverage is essentially gone, and they'll come back to the table and say, okay, look, let's make a deal. I don't buy into the idea that even if you got pick 20, let's say it was Brandon Aiyuk for the first round pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers, a pick 20 for Aiyuk swap, you're not getting, one of the elite guys in this, although deep class. You're not getting Rome Odunze. You're not getting Malik Neighbors. I think if you're the Niners, I don't think you would want a Brian Thomas, who I like, but I'd much rather have Brandon Aiyuk over Brian Thomas or Adonai Mitchell or Jalen Polk, who I like Jaden Polk a lot, but I just think what the Niners have in Aiyuk, unless you're getting one of the top 3 receivers, you're not going to be able to replace unless you're so focused in on how much money you're going to have to pay him. I'd rather pay Aiyuk now and get him under contract. Him and Purdy's chemistry is off the charts. I think they're a top 5, top 10 quarterback receiver duo in the entire league. I think it would be foolish if San Francisco, even for the 20th overall pick, it would be very foolish if San Francisco traded Aiyuk away.
I don't love the idea of it either. At the same time, if the Parag Marathe is a tough negotiator.
Yeah.
According to what I heard most recently from Ian Rappaport, it was that, Aiyuk, or from Adam Schefter on the ESPN mock draft the other day, said something along the lines of Brandon Aiyuk would prefer to be with the Niners, but that he's most interested in getting the big payday. And if it doesn't come from the Niners, then so be it. The other report from Rappaport was that, that Aiyuk wanted to wait until after the market was kind of reset, including Justin Jefferson, and then try to, that makes sense, right? Because then the market always goes up. Jefferson's going to make a mint. Aiyuk's an all-pro receiver. And maybe if Jefferson gets $35 million a year, maybe Aiyuk gets $30 million a year. But who's to say? Maybe the 49ers, breaking point is like 23 or 24 or 25 million. What if it's 26 million and he wants 30? So it's like, and then do you want him to hold out? If he holds out, you can always force him to play on the 5th-year option, but is that really an option? Because then you've got a guy who may be an island unto himself in the locker room. I don't know that that's a good solution. So even though it appears that the Niners have options, do they really have options? It's almost like, are you going to make your receiver happy, or are you going to deal with a receiver who's unhappy? Is it going to be some hardline negotiation like you had with Nick Bosa, where he sits out until almost week 1, and now you have a receiver that might have a kind of a down year because he didn't have any training camp? It's just I don't know if the Niners have as many options as we think. And then the other question is, how are they going to get this offensive tackle that we all know they need? because it's likely that offensive tackle is probably not going to be there at 31, especially if you're wanting a premier offensive tackle. So then the question is, well, I mean, if you get the 20th pick, could you get Troy Fautanu from Washington? Can you get J.C. Latham from Alabama? Those are the two kind of premier guys. And then there's Amarius Mims, who, man, he looks awesome, but he only played 8 games.
Yep.
Then there's Tyler Guyton, who I really like as a right tackle, but is he going to be there at 20? I don't know. So it's like, and are any of these guys going to be there at 31?
Right.
So if they really want to tackle, and the Steelers are offering, what would you want from the Steelers if let's just say you had crossed the bridge that, you know what, Aiyuk wants too much and you got to pay Purdy and it's not going to work out. And now you've crossed the bridge of, okay, even though you're inside your Super Bowl window, you're open to the idea of moving Brandon Aiyuk. What do you want in return? What is fair value, and what kind of trade return would you want?
I think that's where the conversation of Pittsburgh, even if they gave you 20, and let's say, I don't know exactly what their draft picks are, I'll find them in a second, but let's say they gave you 20 and a 4th rounder, 119, or 20 and a 3rd rounder next year. I don't think Pittsburgh would want to do that either. Like Pittsburgh at 20, you can find not an Aiyuk elite level receiver or top 10 guy now, but you can find a young player like a Brian Thomas, who I think would fit what Pittsburgh likes to do a lot, who's younger, under contract. And you have now Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I would like to think the plan in Pittsburgh is to hopefully build around Justin Fields. Like they want to keep George Pickens. They want to keep Pat Freiermuth. They don't have an offensive lineman that stands out. They're not going to give you Joey Porter Jr., which would be awesome in San Francisco. You're not getting Minkah Fitzpatrick unless somehow they just go, whatever, take whatever you want. So I think,
what if you could get like a Nick Herbig, who's, they have an array of pass rushers, including TJ Watt, and they got 2 starters, and Herbig is almost like a starter. There's the Stanford connection, right? He went to Wisconsin, but his brother went to Stanford. They're both on the team. Would you take Nick Herbig in the 20th pick?
The way San Francisco is built now, having 10 picks, you have to ask yourself, like, let's say it was 20 in Herbig, like you're saying, could you find a Nick Herbig in round 3 or 4? Like, I think the idea that San Francisco likes Marshawn Kneeland a lot, what you could think what you want of him, like they have their eyes towards an edge rusher in this draft class. And I would also like to believe that they realize they have Yetur Gross-Matos and Leonard Floyd on contracts that they can get out of, I believe, in a year or two. So they're not tied to any of those guys long-term. And if they can get a younger guy who they've been looking for, that bendy speed rusher, it was D Ford, then it was Drake Jackson, and now it's insert potential rookie. I have a hard time believing the 20th pick and a maybe depth, high-end rotational piece edge rusher would sweeten the pot enough for them. I just, like, the way I look at the current Aiyuk Niner negotiations is they're in a far better place than Deebo Samuel was as of now. Like, Deebo asked for a trade. They were like, okay, like, we'll ride this thing out. Now, I think me and you would agree that Deebo's had spurts of greatness, but overall that contract's not been lived up to. I think Aiyuk is a different story. I think Aiyuk, the way he plays, I don't think it's like Deebo's body wasn't right coming into his first year of his contract. Whereas Aiyuk's body, he's already in Levi Stadium, already working out there. Like the questions of, will the holdout hurt him? I don't think are that serious. And I think if he didn't want to be there, he wouldn't still be there. And I do believe they get a deal done. And I don't think the 20th pick and a potential starting edge rusher would really, tell San Francisco, yes, we'd have to make this deal where you can get Aiyuk and hold on to him and pay him and also find whatever piece you may want on top of the 20th pick elsewhere in this draft.
It's interesting. The Steelers also have Darnell Washington behind Freiermuth.
That's a good point. Oh, yeah.
And Darnell Washington is a gigantic tight end. The Niners are clearly looking for a tight end. Would somebody like that move the needle? I don't know. But it is interesting that, and I don't know how reliable the source is that Chase Senior just quoted out of Pittsburgh, but the idea that Pittsburgh would be surprised if they didn't get Aiyuk
Yeah.
kind of made me go pause and say, wow, well, wait a second there. Maybe this thing's further along than we think. The other thing is, John Lynch is a smart guy, but there's no way he's ever going to say, people are like, well, John Lynch has said. He's never going to say he's going to move Brandon Aiyuk. As soon as he says he's going to move Brandon Aiyuk, Ayuk's value goes down. So you're going to keep Aiyuk until you pull the trigger and move Aiyuk, right? So I don't know how much to believe on that front as far as, well, the Niners haven't said they're going to move Aiyuk. Well, yeah. But the other thing that kind of makes me think that maybe an Aiyuk trade is going to happen is, did you see what Brock Purdy said at the camp the other day with the kids? And he was like, he kind of spoke, I don't want to say in the past tense, but it was like, I'll always appreciate what Brandon has done for me. It was like the kind of thing that you would say if you were moving to, Europe or something, or like it was the kind of thing that you would say if you were, it's like you wouldn't say, like he could have said, hey, Brandon Aiyuk is absolutely essential to what I do. He's my number one wideout. I love the guy. I couldn't picture life without him in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I'm really eager for them to work things out. And I'm really excited to work with him again. He didn't say that. He's like, I really appreciate everything he's done for me to this point. And he was like, well, but it's, getting involved in his contract negotiations is above my pay grade. But, the way he kind of termed it made me feel like, it sounded just like he's expecting there's at least a significant chance that Aiyuk's moving. I don't know. People have meant, I talk about this a lot because it's a big subplot. But then I get the people in the chat, you're rooting for Aiyuk to be traded. No, I'm not. I'm rooting for the Niners to win a Super Bowl. That's what I'm rooting for. And I really don't care if it includes Aiyuk or doesn't include Aiyuk. And I'm infinitely aware of the fact that the cap is finite and you have to make tough decisions. And I don't know, who I'd want to part ways with, but it does seem like receivers are gettable. Tyler Boyd is still out there. Not that he's Aiyuk, but he's damn good. And there's a lot. This is like the third or fourth year in a row where it's been an enormously deep receiver draft. That being said, is there a receiver, Sterling, before we get into our mock here, that you really, really like and would be super excited about if they decided they were moving off of Aiyuk? Not necessarily to take at 20 or even at 31, but just a receiver that's in this draft that could be had by the Niners that you would be like, yeah, they lost Aiyuk, but they signed Tyler Boyd and they drafted X. And now I still feel pretty good at receiver.
I think there's two. One of them will probably go in the second round, and that first one is Ricky Pearsall from Florida. I think he is arguably the best route runner in this entire class. He's great at almost deceiving a defensive back in his routes. And I think when you talk about a Kyle Shanahan scheme that he can get guys open, Pearsall can get himself open with ease. Aiyuk's kind of that same player where Aiyuk can get open by himself. He's probably the best separator in the entire league right now, or at least up in that conversation. I think Pearsall has deep speed, some of the best hands in the entire class. I get he isn't this 6'3", 220-pound monster as Brian Thomas might be, but I think Pearsall, while he might get knocked off his routes by a bigger defensive back or a linebacker, I do think that over the middle, he would be exactly what San Francisco looks for in a receiver. But let's say that you're at 20, and let's say you trade Aiyuk away to Pittsburgh or whatnot. I think Jalen Polk from Washington could insert himself into this Niners receiver room and be, I don't want to say a star, but could have an impact in year one. He's 6'1", 203 pounds. I think off the line, he's one of the more explosive receivers in this class. He's really good in and out of his cuts. When you talk about tracking the ball downfield, Jalen Polk is awesome. It's really awesome. And when you have a quarterback now that can, or at least wants to throw it deep, I think Jalen Polk is a name to look out for. Now, that's only if you go to 20. But he had 13 contested catches last year. He has 10-inch hands almost. Like, he's the way he's built just screams, if you want to replace Aiyuk, Jalen Polk could be a guy. But I think the Niners' sweet spot for a receiver is the second round, because you're going to have guys like Corley and you're going to have guys like Pearsall. If you get lucky, Javon Baker's in the third round there. Like there are players that
Central Florida, yeah.
Exactly. Like you can add, if you keep Aiyuk, they can make your offense even more dynamic and you can run this thing back. It's hard to get back to where they were last year, but you want to make this roster more complete. I think keeping Aiyuk and adding a Pearsall, adding a Javon Baker would just be exponential growth of what this offense already has.
What about Tyler Boyd and McCaffrey's brother?
Luke
or
McCaffrey?
Tyler Boyd and Brendan Rice. Rice's kid.
That I'm not as high on Brendan Rice as many people are. I would prefer Luke McCaffrey over Brendan Rice. I believe McCaffrey is a quarterback convert to receiver.
Right. I think this was his first year as a receiver, and he was all conference. It's interesting too because I asked Christian about him, and you know how a lot of those guys at their lockers they're very, very concise with their answers, right. And they don't like to expand on their answers. And it was hilarious because he's in the middle of one of these like group powwows, and he's giving short answer, and then I'm like, hey, Christian. What do you think of Luke? Do you get any time to watch him? And what do you think of him with the draft coming up next year? And, and he went off for like a minute 45. I've watched every game. I love this. I love my brother. I really badly would love to play with him. I know that he has whispered in John Lynch's ear, if not screamed, draft my brother. His brother did run a better 40 time than he even did and was an all-conference player, I believe, as a first-year wide receiver. I got to be honest, when I watched I watched a couple of Rice games and then I watched his highlight film, I don't necessarily see the separation or the explosion. To me, he seems more like a 5th or 6th round pick, but I'm hearing that some teams like him in the 3rd or 4th round. So I'm not super intrigued by him. I do kind of like Brendan Rice because I feel like he does a lot of the little things in and out of his breaks, the route running, the hands. You can kind of see that he is like the same way Jerry was kind of obsessed with playing receiver. His kid's got that obsession too, even though he doesn't have Jerry's, explosiveness and just, Jerry, I think, was a better all-around athlete. His kid's actually maybe even a little bigger. But you do see the ball skills and you do see the urgency from Brendan Rice. And he did play at SC. I just don't know if I see starting caliber or star receiver. I see more like a Juwan Jennings. Like if you were trying to replace Juwan, maybe Brendan Rice would be nice.
So I think Brendan Rice is 6 foot, around 190, 188.
No, I think he's bigger. I think he might be more like 6'3".
Because I know that Luke McCaffrey is around 6'2". And he kind of plays that bigger slot role, which maybe he's someone you look to replace Juwan in a year or so. But the one thing that really bothers me about Brendan Rice is I think he can be a good receiver in the NFL. And I think out of the gate, he could be a player in the red zone. He's really good against man coverage. He's just really inconsistent with his play speed, where one play, you're like, this is incredible. Like, this guy is going to be, the next great receiver, number 2. Like, I see shades of Jerry somewhere in there, and he's a bigger athlete. But then you watch him in the next play, he's a little slow out of his break. And I think if he becomes more consistent, like you said, like he can be a real piece in the cog of this offense. But again, when you talk about, like, I would have him below Pearsall, below Corley, like below Leggett. Like, I think Rice is probably a 3rd round pick, if we're being honest here, or like a super late 2nd. But if he's there in the 3rd round and they pick him, that's a great spot for Brendan Rice. With the Niners.
I kind of like him maybe even a little lower. I mean, I think he's late 3rd, maybe even beginning of day 3. Jeff here says, you laugh, but Brian Thomas, you're talking about from LSU, had almost 20 touchdowns in one season at LSU and is 6'3", 220 and runs a 4.3. No, I think, there's no question he's special. I don't know if you caught Belichick today on the McAfee show, but Belichick made a really interesting point, and it's really true, that if you go back and study past drafts, that taking a quarterback or a wide receiver in the 1st round is kind of a 50-50 proposition as far as do you hit or miss. They're very it's very problematic, or it's very mistake ridden to take a quarterback in the first round or to take a wide receiver in the first round. So it's like, if if you're taking a wide receiver or a quarterback in the first round, you better have a serious conviction that you're taking the right quarterback or the right receiver, because there's a lot of busts, and I thought that was interesting that he kind of highlighted that. He wasn't talking about Brian Thomas, but he was just talking about receivers and quarterbacks in general. So, I mean, the Niners are going to have lots of different options, and it's going to be really interesting to see what direction they decide to go. All right, now we are going to do a mock draft here, and we're going to use the Pro Football Network. And there's a lot of different options for mock drafts. I've done ESPN. I've done Pro Football Database. I've done the PFF. I don't love the PFF, even though I like the rankings, but I just don't feel like the PFF is, there's not enough players in it. Like, they have a very finite number of players, nowhere close to the entire crop. And then some of them, like the mock draft database one, I love, has tons of players, but it also offers you like 9 trades on every pick. And if you want to keep trading down, you could have a draft of 27 picks. Right. And it just seems a little unrealistic as well. Before we jump into the mock draft on this, though, the other Aiyuk suitor that I think could be interesting, and tell me what you think of this one. I've had some people whisper to me that they think that the Commanders, might be willing to move their 2 high second round picks and maybe Jahan Dotson. Now, this was a Bleacher Report rumor as well. That included Dotson. But what do you think of that trade? Would you, if the Commanders came knocking and say, I mean, let's be honest, Bob Myers went there because they're trying to resuscitate a dormant, iconic, brand in the Washington Redskins / Commanders, and they're trying to build a new stadium. And so, even though it's year 1 of the head coach, year 1 of the general manager, I've been told a couple times by different people that I know are in the know, that don't look at them as a first-year regime with the normal traits of a first-year regime. They said that, they're in a major rush to have success on the field, resuscitate the brand, get the fans excited, put butts in the seats, and get the momentum rolling towards a new stadium so they can get out of FedEx Field there in Landover or Rowjohn or wherever they call it. So maybe the Commanders, who signed like 15 different free agents, maybe they don't want to use those 4 picks they have in the top 50 on rookies, and maybe they would be willing to throw Dotson and 2 high seconds to the Niners for Aiyuk. And if that were the offer, you might be able to get, an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, and a receiver that you really like, and have Jahan Dotson, and get out of the salary cap mess that you're in to some degree. What do you think of that kind of a deal involving Aiyuk? That Aiyuk to the Commanders for 2 high 2s and Dotson?
So that would give San Francisco an instant small slot receiver in Dotson, something they've been wanting for a long time. Probably give Kyle Shanahan his Taylor Gabriel like he had in Atlanta. I have to go over Dotson again. I don't watch the Commanders very often, but
he's got good ball skills, but he's smallish. He's had kind of 2 disappointing years. It's not like he's taken the league by storm by any means.
But that would also give you pick 31, or you'd still have pick 31,
36, and 40. So you'd have 3 picks in the top 40 with the ability to maybe parlay those picks into a trade up, or maybe you pick at 31 and you pick at 36 and you pick at 40.
Well, I think at that point, if you're going to do that, I think, let's say you had picks 40 and you had pick 31, that does open the door to get inside the top 20. Now, it depends on who you want. I also think that it should, if you have that many picks, open the door to not even think about tackle or guard unless you get inside top 20, but you could also entertain the idea of maybe a Kool-Aid McKinstry, who would fit phenomenally next to Mooney Ward. And once he's gone in 1 year's time, if he is indeed gone in next offseason, you'd walk into it with a very cheap contract in Kool-Aid McKinstry with the 5th-year option. Then you can go and still get your right tackle. Now you'd have to find a receiver somewhere, but again, this receiver class is probably one of the deepest we've ever seen, or at least in the last 10 years, at least since 2020 in that first round, which was crazy with receivers. But I would like the 2 second-round picks over a top 20 pick. Now that sounds crazy in retrospect, but
not necessarily. I mean, depending where the value is. I
Right.
personally think the draft is, 12, 15 deep at the top end, but then from 15 to 50, I think you could get a very similar player. And why not have 2 instead of 1?
Yeah, and there is a conversation to be had of, well, you can have, let's say it's 20 and 31, and you can trade back at 31 and get yourself, maybe 2 second-round picks in there, or add further draft picks next year if you need to.
Especially in this draft, when you get to the end of round 1, you Thursday night next week, if somehow Bo Nix is still there, if somehow Michael Penix is still there, you may see teams trade from the top of the second or the middle of the second into the back of the first, so they get that 5th-year option on the quarterback.
Yep.
And that's what the Ravens did when they traded up with the Patriots for Lamar Jackson. They wanted that 5th-year option. So that's something that we kind of see on an annual basis, that the Niners are sitting in almost an ideal spot right there to make that kind of a move. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I also think, let's say they do get those 2 second-round picks. It makes me believe that while you don't want to lose a player like Aiyuk, let's say a player like Leggett can be pick 40. Let's say Jordan Morgan is pick 36, or insert tackle you like that could still be there.
Kingsley, Suma,
right, who
Sumatea,
Niners like a lot from BYU, and you still have pick 31. That's kind of if Johnny Newton's on the board still, or there's you almost have this luxury pick of, we can get a blue chip talent at a position we may not really need.
Cooper DeJean or something.
Exactly. Now, I think Cooper DeJean goes to at least Green Bay in the first round. He'd be phenomenal there. But if you do trade Aiyuk for 2 second-round picks, it opens so many more doors that I think this Aiyuk for 20 wouldn't, because it gives you so much more flexibility, unless you traded back from 31, like you said, if a team like the Broncos or the Raiders want a quarterback on a 5th-year option.
A lot of people like Lad McConkey. Amar Singh in my chat here says McConkey will not bust no matter what, too precise and too quick. He ran in the 4.3s. He had an injury-filled year this year. He's got great ball skills. I'm worried about the injuries. I think the durability factor is a concern for me. There's no question he's got talent. There's no question he's got ball skills. And he ran, as I said, 4.39 or 4.37, something like that. That's great. That's great 40 time. I'm concerned about durability with McConkey, but what is your thought on him?
Yeah, I think he's a player that would surprisingly go like take Kansas City, for example. Probably want a receiver. At least you could assume so. I'm not as high on Xavier Worthy as many other draft pundits might be. Now, maybe I'm foolish there, but I would rather have McConkey over Worthy. I think
Worthy, of course, for those who don't know, ran the 4.21 record-breaking combine time, and Mel's. I was watching the Mel and Field Yates. Field Yates, and they were saying, hey, you know what? Worthy's not just a track guy, but he also ran that at 164 pounds, and there's a lot of NFL teams that don't want anybody under 180. So 164 is really, really skinny. That's kind of like Tutu Atwell territory. But I mean, do you like Tutu Atwell? I kind of do. I kind of do too. I mean, I think Tutu. I mean, I watched the Niners on the All-22 against the Rams, and man, it's hard to stay with Tutu Atwell. I mean, he creates space, and he's dynamic. So, in a lot of ways, I think Worthy's probably in that category.
He just feels like someone that can get bumped off his routes so quickly, and if you do that, it halts all the speed that he has. Now, he's certainly durable, but I'd rather have a player like McConkey, like a Pearsall. Like, I would be even like a player like Jalen Polk. Like, I would rather take a chance on those guys who I think don't like. Worthy could be a great player in the right system. I wouldn't want to see him in Buffalo. I think cold air would be awful for him. Wouldn't want to see him in Denver. I think he needs to go a place inside a dome where he can just run until his wheels fall off, and that'll benefit him so much. But I think, even a player like Malachi Corley, who really isn't a receiver, he's a running back. Like, I think he could fit what a team like Carolina would like to do, or a team like Jacksonville that has Trevor Lawrence and what they have Gabe Davis now, and looking for a receiver, probably not going to get one at 17 that they love. I could see them going with Corley and saying, in the second round, being like, be a masher, just go there and annihilate a linebacker for us and give us some physicality. But I'm not really on the Xavier Worthy train, kind of at all. Like, if San Francisco picked Worthy at 31, I think I'd be actually like frustrated and mad about it.
Well, it's weird. It's like, I don't even think he's the best receiver on his team.
No, he's not.
I mean, Adonai Mitchell is a bigger, better receiver, I think. So that always kind of bothers me. I mean, you'd like to think that you'd get the best player on his college team. I'm kind of a Leggett fan. I see AJ Brown. Now I know he was a 1-year guy, but I mean, this guy ran in the 4.3s at 230 pounds. And I watched South Carolina against North Carolina this year. I watched South Carolina like 3 different times, and I watched his highlight film. His highlight film is incredible. Now, there are some drops if you watch the games, but I mean, you can throw the ball short to Xavier Leggett, and he just has an explosive gear that he can get to. And it's like when you're 230 and you're getting to that 4.3 run away from the coverage kind of a gear, that's impressive. I mean, that's impressive to watch. In some ways, I know he's a 1-year guy. He had like 4 touchdowns coming into the year, and then he had a big year this year. But I like Brian Thomas more, but I do like Xavier Leggett. I'll tell you the other receiver that I really love, and if we played fantasy college football, everybody would know this guy's name, but Malik Washington for Virginia is only about 5'8", 5'9". There's a lot of Tyreek Hill there. Now, he doesn't quite have the Tyreek Hill explosiveness, but man, there was not a more productive receiver in college football this year than Malik Washington. And he was damn good at Northwestern and then transferred and was really good at Virginia. So, and Virginia was not a terrific team this year, but that guy, 10 catches, 150 yards almost every single week. And there's something to really like about him, but he's 5'9". He's a 5'9" wide receiver. So, there's trade-offs for all these guys. All right, let's get into our mock draft. And what we'll do is we'll share the screen, and I'll let you make the pick since you're my guest.
Okay.
And we'll go through this. We can talk it through, but we'll go through it. And I'll let you make the picks. And I put it, we're Pro Football Network, 7 rounds. We're going fast. And we got the Niners there. And that's it, right? Can we just enter solo draft? There we go.
I'm just waiting for the Jaden Daniels #1 overall pick, and you're like, oh, the whole mock draft's busted.
Okay, here we are. We can do trades if you want. I'll offer you the trades, but I'll let you quarterback this thing all the way through. So we're at 31. Before we look at the board, Cleveland's called. They're offering 54.85 in their second round pick next year for 31 and 176.
Don't love that.
So we can reject that. Then Denver's called, and they've offered 76 in their first round pick next year.
No.
I don't love that either. So let's reject. So now let's look at the board, and Johnny Newton is on the top of the board.
I think Dane Brugler had him going to the Niners in his mock draft this morning for the Athletics. So it's very fitting that he's on there.
Well, it's funny too, because I had Baldy on a couple weeks ago, and I said, Baldy, there's a bunch of different defensive linemen in this draft. Give me the guy that you like. And before I could even get out the question, he's like, Johnny Newton, Illinois. He loves Johnny Newton. So that's from Baldy. But here's the board. You got Michael Penix sitting there, which means you could trade probably back because somebody wants Penix. There's Adonai Mitchell. Keon Coleman's got a big catch radius. You got the BYU offensive tackle. Jordan Morgan's there. Darius Robinson, who was the practice player of the week. In a lot of ways, Darius Robinson, when I look at the highlights of him, I'm thinking, I see a little Aldon Smith there. But he's another guy that he was voted the defensive practice player of the week at the Senior Bowl. McConkey's there. TJ Tampa is a very physical, hard-hitting, big number one corner. I'm a huge fan of this kid, Zach Frazier from West Virginia. That was another thing Baldy said. Baldy said, you don't have a great offensive line unless you have a great center. And he thinks that Frazier's a great center. I do too. He's got the wrestling background. He's a 4.0 GPA. He's dominating inline blocker. So he's intriguing to me. Max Melton is intriguing to me. Rook Ororo is intriguing to me.
Probably the best name in the entire draft, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea of Greg, just the idea of making Greg say that every day, every week is going to be awesome. Edgerrin Cooper's a great player. I'm an A&M fan. I watch A&M every week. He's a terrific player. He can play Mike. He can play the weak side. Do you need a replacement for Dre Greenlaw? Then there's Leggett. There's Rakestraw. So I'm going to defer to you. I'm going to let you make the pick. So what direction you want to go here, Sterling?
So I think you have to get into the mind of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, right? They like to build trenches out. And knowing Malik Collins is on a 1-year deal, essentially, and they have Javon Hargrave locked up and just lost Eric Armstead, quote unquote, lost Eric Armstead, letting him go to Jacksonville. The Johnny Newton pick is kind of how is he still on the board at pick 31? Many people.
He's very quick. He's very
Javon
quick.
Hargrave. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, though, is it worth getting a receiver or getting a Kingsley Suamataia or a Jordan Morgan and then going and trying getting a Chris Jenkins or a Michael Hall in the second round to, I think San Francisco had a top 30 visit with Michael Hall, who I'm sure won't go until round 2 or 3, but Newton, I think, is the bona fide, if he's there, he's a blue chipper. Probably he's at least in conversation, if not behind Byron Murphy. Some people have him above Byron Murphy for the best defensive tackle in the entire draft class.
Murphy went 2 picks before, by the way, to the Lions.
Right, which is a great spot for him next to Aiden Hutchinson out there.
And DJ Reader. They just added DJ Reader inside.
So, the one thing that does bother me about Johnny Newton is, I guess bother is probably too aggressive of a word, but he isn't the greatest run stopper. But, I mean, he's super quick off the line. He's a great pass rusher. And when you talk about the Niners wanting to get back to just read and react defense, go and get the quarterback, don't have these stunts involved, just go, essentially. I think Johnny Newton, if he's at 31, I think the Niners would have a hard time saying no to him. But I also wonder, it's an interior defensive tackle. And I don't know if the Niners would value that at 31. The last time they've taken an interior guy in the first round has been Eric Armstead. And that was pre-Kyle Shanahan, I believe. There was Solomon Thomas.
Kinlaw.
Oh, you're right. I'm so sorry. Yes, you're right. Kinlaw, yes. So, man,
I mean, here's the thing. Hargrave doesn't play the run. So what is the real need inside?
Right.
I think the guy that you get inside has got to be a two-way player. He's got to be,
I would agree.
Got to be like a BY, Bryant Young. He's got to be a guy that, he gives you some pass rush, but he plays the run. That to me, Michael Hall, I know the board, we get, especially as we look at these mock drafts and we look at the board, we get into perceived value,
right.
What is value? Value for anybody. If somebody comes to your home and prices, whatever, carpet, the value is from the price that they give you first to the price that you pay, right? I mean, that's where you perceive value. It's going to cost you $5,000 for the carpet. And then you say, well, you know what, though, we're going to cut this and that, and we're going to give it to you for $3,000. And then it's hey, wait a second. So the perceived value is that you saved $2,000. But did you really, or was the first price kind of a high price? And I mentioned that just because all these games, we're talking about prospects here. These are people evaluating people. It's always problematic and it's an imperfect science. Personally, I think Michael Hall might be better than Johnny Newton. And Michael Hall led the nation this year in pass rush win rate at defensive tackle. I just watched Ohio State, Michigan the other day, and this guy's firing into the backfield. I mean, he ran 4.76. Now he's not Aaron Donald running 4.68,
Right.
but 4.76 at 300 pounds is moving. Michael Hall, according to the stopwatch at least, ran the same time as Braden Fisk and is the fastest defensive tackle in the class. So I know the perception is that Newton's better, but I don't know. I mean, I watched Newton and I've watched Michael Hall, and I think they're very comparable players. They're both that kind of sawed off, shorter, undersized, pass rushing interior tackles that are just a menace. They get their hands on you, and they're technicians, and they're fast, and they're, tenacious. I think they're very similar players. I kind of prefer Hall to Newton because of the health. He's got a cleaner health deal, and he's also younger. Michael Hall's not going to be 21, I believe, until like June or July. So he's one of the youngest players in the draft. And I realized if you took Johnny Newton here, people would say, oh, he fell to you. Great pick.
Yeah.
And the mocks would give you an A. If you took Michael Hall here, they'd be like, reach. He's you get a C- because you reached. But in reality, I don't know that there's a huge difference. They have different strengths and weaknesses, but I think they're very comparable. It's my way of just saying it's like, the board is the board. But like as Belichick pointed out today, every team in the NFL's board is going to be different,
right,
based on the way their scouts rank these players. So just food for thought. But that all being said, what direction would you like to go? You want to go Johnny Newton? You want to go with one of these other players, a receiver, an offensive lineman, a corner? What are you thinking?
So I think if you were picking at 20 and Johnny Newton was there, I think you'd take him. I think Michael Hall, who I do like a lot, he's 6'2", 299 pounds. He's put on about 20 pounds since leaving Ohio State, so he's bulking up for the draft. He has the instincts to be a good run defender, but he just isn't there yet. Now, Chris Kocurek can mitigate some of the issues a lot of these guys have, but if you're at 31 and Johnny Newton is there, and I would not be scared to leave a player like Kingsley Suamataia or Jordan Morgan on the board for somebody else. Like, I would not be afraid to do that, knowing that Blake Fisher's down there and Cooper Beebe's there. And I know you like Zach Frazier on the interior. Like, those guys aren't tackles. I'm also not of the mindset that San Francisco needs a tackle. I would not be surprised if they go guard in this draft or try to improve center. I think it's as simple as go Johnny Newton, and you can figure everything out later, because I think you have the blue chipper you want. And it also means that you don't have to apply or try to get a defensive tackle in the third or fourth round. You can go get the guy who I think many teams would have inside their top 15 of their big boards.
We'll go Johnny Newton. Here we are. I think we've decided Johnny Newton.
Yes, sir.
So they start with Johnny Newton, and now we're rocketing through the second round. We're down at 63. Denver's called. They are offering 76 and their third for 63 and 251.
I don't like that.
Not loving that, so we'll reject that. So that was the only trade. So now we're on the board here at 63,
right.
And here's who's the best players according to this mock. Cameron Kinchins, the safety from Miami, who I'm a big fan of his. Ben Sinnott, tight end from K-State, big fan of his. Chris Jenkins, the defensive tackle from Michigan, whose dad was Chris Jenkins, played for Carolina.
Panther legend. Heck yeah.
Yeah, and also this Chris Jenkins is was on the top of the Bruce Feldman freaks list. I mean, he's a workout machine. There's Cedric Gray, if you're looking to replace Dre Greenlaw, and Cedric Gray is my favorite linebacker in this draft. Then there's Braden Fisk, who I thought the workout was amazing. I mean, I don't know if he's an every down guy, but he could be a pass rushing rotational player that Kocurek would really love. There's Roman Wilson, if you want to go receiver. They did bring in Brandon Dorless from Oregon, who's about 285, and he might resuscitate their NASCAR package. He's kind of a D tackle, tweener. Junior Colson, there's Ricky Pearsall right there. Marshawn Nealand. They brought in Nealand. A lot of people like Cole Bishop. Mahogany's a brawler at guard. What do you think? Mason Smith was a 5-star. Mason Smith's one of the interesting guys in this draft. He was a 5-star recruit out of high school and never could quite get it going at LSU. But I mean, you're talking about 6'6", 310 pounds, fast. Mason Smith, he wore number 0, but he's an amazing talent. I'm a big Blake Corum fan. Roger Rosengarten, a lot of people feel, is a plug-and-play offensive tackle. Jeremiah Trotter's a great linebacker. The Yale kid's got eternal, long arms. What do you think? What direction you want to go? You've got a defensive tackle. Do you want to go offensive line? I can also kind of look at any position you want if you want me to here.
Yeah, let me see what we have at offensive line. Because I think at this moment, when you've got Newton, you have probably at least 3 of the better pass rushers in football. And you have 2 of them on the interior, where Johnny Newton probably is at least a top 20 interior pass rusher, I believe, coming out of college. Like, he's that good.
At center, you got Cedric Van Prawn from Georgia. Tanner Bordolini. I'm a big fan of this kid, Bo Limmer from Arkansas. He's a 6'5", 6'5" center. Okay, those are the top centers. The top guard, Christian Mahogany, who's wore 73 for Boston College, total brawler. Mason McCormick was a phenomenal player at South Dakota State, and then he went to the combine and kind of showed that he was big time. Zinter, a lot of people think is nasty, and he had some injuries at Michigan, but a lot of people love Zinter. Ladarius Henderson is got some pulling capabilities. And then at tackle, you've got Rosengarten, you got the Yale kid, Amagaji, you got Notre Dame's Blake Fisher. And then I kind of like this group down here. I like Javon Foster from Missouri. I like Garrett Greenfield a lot from South Dakota State. I like Christian Jones from Texas. I like Caden Wallace from Penn State. I think there's Frank Crum, the ginger from Wyoming. This kid from Howard, Aneem Dankwa, is crazy good. He's kind of like the guy that went to the Browns last year, Dawan Jones. He's like 6'8", 360, and he's from Howard, and it's going to take a year or two of tutelage there. But I mean, he is a monstrous offensive tackle. So what do you think? You want to go offensive tackle? The best tight end is Ben Sinnott.
That one is
best receiver is Roman Wilson. Pearsall's there.
So I'm of the mindset that you can I really like Ben Sinnott, but I also believe that Roger Rosengarten, I know I think Joe Staley is training him at Washington. They were just at the local pro day for them and had a personal workout with him. And they were I think it was Chris Forrester and John Lynch stayed after the workout to talk to him privately. So they've shown a lot of intrigue with him. I also like Blake Fisher a lot from Notre Dame. 6'5", 315 pounds, 34.25-inch arms. Really doesn't have many weaknesses. So because of that, I don't think we need to go tackle here. And I also think that, I hate to say they don't value a tackle or the interior in the second round, but receiver is really intriguing, and honestly, even cornerback too. The receiver, they're so deep at receiver in this class. But when I see Kalen Carson up there like that, I don't know how much you know about Kalen Carson, Larry, but I
love his teammate. I love Malik Mustafa, the safety from Wake. I haven't studied Carson that much, but I probably should. 5'11", 190 pound, lean. It says well-sized frame. Good natural strength, torrid foot speed. I don't know what he ran, but obviously he ran fast.
So the reason why there really isn't much on him is because he had a leg injury, and he hasn't been involved in a lot of the scouting process during the draft process. But he's got pretty good size. He can play outside. He plays really fast. He accelerates well. A really good transitioner. Good tackler. Likes to run, defend. Gets physical at the line of scrimmage. One thing about him that will knock him down some people's draft board is he's kind of grabby, but so is Mooney Ward, where at times he gets called for a holding call downfield. Or I think at one time after the Vikings game, Mooney Ward had the most illegal contacts in football. So Kalen Carson reminds me of that kind of player. He can play man, he can play zone. He doesn't really have the ball skills you like in a cornerback to convert picks, but he can certainly lock down a receiver if he has to. I think if I was
would you rather have Carson than Pearsall, the Florida receiver?
Probably not, because I see Mike Sainristil still down there, and I'm in love with him at Michigan. So I probably would
he's
go.
Small, but he was the team captain.
Yeah,
Sainristil still is a great little player. He had the key. He had the clinching interception in the national championship game.
I think if you're the Niners and you retain Aiyuk, you have a thumper in Deebo who, at times, doesn't always stay healthy. Right. You have Aiyuk back, who is a great separator, and I think against Kansas City, and one thing that really frustrates me with the Niners is they tend to only play 3 receivers all year long. And I think Pearsall could break that trend where, let's say Deebo goes down in the big game. You'd have 2 really good separators in the playoffs or the Super Bowl against Kansas City. I think if you want to get nuts and just give Purdy everything for 1 year, I think you'd go Pearsall and just say, you know what, Kyle, all the chips are in. Go give me Ricky Pearsall.
Let's do it. We'll go Ricky Pearsall. You comfortable with that?
I'm good.
All right. Ricky Pearsall, round 2. We're off to round 3. They don't pick again until number 94.
So far.
And let's see, at 94, the Vikings are offering 108 and 129 for 94 and 215. Would you move back? I
don't hate that.
Yeah, I don't hate that either, because you're consolidating picks and you're only really moving back, 14 spots? 94 to 108, and you're moving up, from 215 to 129. Now we can hide this real quick and see who's on the board.
And I think they pick at first. They pick at 124, 132, 135. Like they're back to back pretty quickly in the 4th round.
Yeah, they pick again at 124, 132, and 135. So they have 3 picks coming.
So and you have 4 picks in like a 6-pick span that from 124, 129, 132, 135. You can load up if you really wanted to in the 4th round.
I mean, this is why this draft is exciting for the Niners in a lot of ways, because they do have some picks and they do have a way to really dramatically improve their football team.
Yeah.
At 94, Mason Smith is still here from LSU, the big defensive tackle. They looked at Braylon Allen. If you want a big running back, there he is. Is Johnny Wilson a receiver, or is Johnny Wilson an outstanding flexed out tight end? If they really thought that he was an outstanding flexed out tight end, he might be interesting. Amagaji is the longest arm tackle. He had a quad injury this year, so he didn't play. But a lot of people feel like Amagaji is an absolute moldable ball of clay. Austin Booker is an underrated pass rusher. This Texas Tech safety, Dadrian Taylor Demerson. I don't know if you saw him, but he's just a hyperactive tackle machine. You got a 1 technique defensive tackle in McKinley Jackson there.
So
Jaden Hicks is a hitter.
Yeah, I was going to say
Andrew
Jaden
Phillips
Hicks is really intriguing. Man.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys there. I mean, Mustafa, they say they need a safety. Mustafa's there. Bordolini's a good center. I mean, there's some good. Malik Washington's there. McCormick. What are you thinking? What are you thinking right here in the 3rd round? Or do you want to go back and take that trade and move down and garner more picks?
So it does look like that Mike Sainristil was off the board, if I'm correct. It looks like he's gone.
Let's see.
Which would
Mikey
lean me.
Went to, who did he go to?
Is he gone? Let's see.
Yeah, he went to the Lions.
Man, they got Murphy and Sainristil.
I mean, the Lions are coming, man. I mean, the Lions are coming.
Oh yeah.
And
well, they had us this year.
I was a big fan of Blake Corum too. I think Blake Corum to me reminds me a lot of Emmitt Smith. I think he's a star.
Wow. Okay.
I love Blake Corum, but he's going to the Bears there, so he's out.
So I do wonder now that Mike Sainristil's off the board, if you can see the cornerbacks for a second. Yeah. Do the Niners get a little worried that they like Andrew Phillips a lot? He isn't the greatest tackler.
They worked him out. Kyrie Jackson's a 6'3", 6'4".
I love Kyrie Jackson.
Corner. Cam Hart's a big corner. Chow Smith-Wade is small, but he's a tremendous corner. Daquan Hardy's interesting in that he's a small corner, but he's an elite return guy. Might be the best return guy in the country. And if you're looking for, a return guy with the new return rules, they also met with Elijah Jones from Boston College. He's got great size. it's a good. I love this kid Willie Drew from Virginia State on day 3, but Andrew Phillips has got great workout numbers. I mean, you could go corner here.
So
the kid that went
Phillips,
one pick before, Renardo Green, was one of my favorites. He went one pick before to the Titans. I love Renardo Green from Florida State.
So what does worry me is if you're the Niners, can you afford to, and I get they have Isaac Yiadom and they just signed Rock Ya-Sin. I'm not a big Rock Ya-Sin fan by any means, but to me there is a concern of what do you want to do at cornerback? Do you want Lenore playing inside? Do you want him playing outside? You do run the risk at this moment. If you don't find another nickelback, you don't have one now. Is that maybe an overstated worry? Potentially. Andrew Phillips
You trade this pick to the Browns for Greg Newsome.
Yeah, and that's certainly, I think that was a rumor early on in the offseason, but Andrew Phillips is there. And he's 5'10", 191, hyper physical, sometimes too grabby, but he's hard to beat vertically. I think he's one of the best processors at the cornerback position in this draft. He can cover in shadow, I think, better than Samer Steele could. My only concern with him is that San Francisco likes cornerbacks that can tackle. And Andrew Phillips, just, in my opinion, is a horrible run defender. And
Tyree Jackson is 6'4". I mean, he's a big corner if you wanted, an edge setting presence there. And that's what they had in Emmanuel Mosley. And let's be honest, everybody talked about Chase Young and this and that, but really one of the the big guys that they missed this year was the corner. They missed Emmanuel Mosley and his ability to set the edge on the corner.
So I'm going to take our chances here because I really do want Kyrie Jackson. He's 6'3", 200 pounds, almost 33-inch arms, knows how to use his body, physical tackler at the line of scrimmage. He's a guy that doesn't just tackle. He loves to tackle out of Oregon. You can argue he's one of the best cornerbacks in this class at evading space of a receiver, and he's really good at the catch point. So because of that, I think he'll be there in, 12 picks? I think trading back.
There's 3 corners that are rated higher than him that would probably come off the board, first in this mock.
I think trading back would be the smartest move with the Vikings. To what was that? 14 picks, I think.
Let's do it. We'll do it. We'll accept that trade.
Fingers crossed. Kyrie Jackson went.
Okay, so now we're at 108.
Okay,
but you still have Kyrie Jackson went, but you still have Andrew Phillips if you want to take Phillips there.
I think
let's see Mason Smith's there.
Your guy's still there. Jaden Hicks is still there.
Jaden Hicks is still there. Mustafa, if you want a safety, he's still there.
For the sake of just the Niners having a visit with the guy and seemingly liking him a lot, and I think San Francisco would like in a division that has Lockett and JSN and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, depending on what the Cardinals do in this year's draft, I think getting Phillips makes a lot of sense now. It will give Lenore the flexibility to go inside and outside. Phillips wouldn't have to play on base downs all the time. I think Yiadom could fill in there on the outside if you need to. So I would go Phillips here at 108, and I think you get good value there.
All right, so we went Phillips, and now we're sitting at 124.
Okay.
If you go Cade Stover, the tight end from Ohio State, tall tight end, Jaden Hicks. If you go safety, Wazoo. There's some interesting players. Malik Washington is there all day. Ray Davis. I don't know if he's from San Francisco. Ray Davis from Kentucky is a phenomenal running back. Theo Johnson, who has some really good workout numbers from Penn State. Rice's kid. Somebody mocked Jared Wiley, the TCU tight end, to them. He's on the board. The center Bo Limmer is there. Chow Smith Wade. The Niners brought in Jacob Cowing from Arizona. Yeah. Cowing's interesting. He's a good route runner. He's not the biggest guy, but he runs in the 4.3s. That's an interesting one. Javon Baker, if you want to go receiver, he's there. So there's a lot of interesting ones. Jonah Ellis, I think, is one of the most polished pass rushers in this draft class. That's Luther Ellis's kid, one of his kids. And if you watch Utah, this guy's got a nasty, ridiculous spin move. where he can spin, outside, inside out, outside in. Jonah Ellis is a force off the edge. He's a little smaller than you'd want, the Niners usually have guys around 265, 270. He's more like 250. But what are you thinking here at 124? Or is there a spot you want me to look at? No trades are being offered.
I think my eyes are taking me towards Jaden Hicks because the Hufanga situation is so up in the air currently with the injury and if he'll be there. Like, if this was draft
big
day,
safety, 6'3", 202.
Like round 2, I have a firm belief Jaden Hicks will be taken in early day 2. Kind of a throwback, 6'5". He's 6'1", hard hitter. Like when you talk about an enforcer on defense, he just likes to thump. And it's like you put that guy in this defense, and there is a conversation to be had of, is he a strong safety? Is he a free safety? He can play special teams. He'll get nasty and dirty with tight ends and receivers. Like he's just unafraid to play football and come down into the box. He's also really good in coverage. Like if there's fear, and I don't know how you feel about this, but with the Hufanga situation and all the reports of cannot have his job back and the injury, like maybe can't repay him or re-sign him next offseason when he's up. Like I think Jaden Hicks, you give me Jair Brown and Jaden Hicks in this secondary, you got 2 thumping playmaking safeties behind a really good defensive line. That's really intriguing. But we also haven't taken an offensive lineman yet. And I'm sure fans are like, what the hell is going on? So,
but there's some good ones here. I mean, I love Javon Foster. Now I've watched him extensively. He was really good at the Senior Bowl. He's got huge long arms. He's a perfect, him and Greenfield. Greenfield is one of my sleeper guys as well. He's a perfect swing tackle. He's played the right side. He's played the left side. He was incredibly athletic. I think he had, in fact, I don't have it in front of me, but I think Garrett Greenfield at the combine set the offensive line vertical record with like 37.5-inch vertical.
Jeez.
So, that's an amazing thing. And they won the last 2 FCS national championships. I'm a big fan of Greenfield, big fan of Foster. Christian Jones, I thought looked really good in the one-on-ones.
I like Christian Jones a lot.
At Senior Bowl, and they brought in Caden Wallace. To me, any of those 4 guys, I kind of like them in that order too.
Okay.
Foster, then Greenfield, then Jones, then Wallace. But that's the offensive tackles. Limmer's there. He's a really good center. Tight end is still a need. Defense overall, to me, the edge rushers are real interesting here. Javon Solomon led the nation, I believe, in sacks from Troy.
16, he had 16 sacks in 14 games, 19% pass rush win rate this year. Really good.
Yeah, he's incredible, as is Jonah Ellis.
Solomon's 6 foot.
These are smaller guys. The guy that I really love, too, is Muhammad Kamara, who's down here at Colorado State. I think, 6'1", 255, 260, but Kamara is a crazy athlete. If this kid were 6'3" or 6'4", he's already off the board, probably late first round. He had a big year. The only thing down on the guy is he's 6'1.5". Yeah. So there's edge rushers that are intriguing, but this is kind of where you have to, I think, start to play the board as best player available.
Right. I agree.
But what do you think? You're making the picks here. You can have anybody you want. I can show you any position you want. What are you looking at?
Let's go to guard for a second. I know Limmer's there, but Coleman.
Brandon Coleman from TCU. There's the big A&M guard, Layden Robinson. Isaiah Adams from Illinois. Zinter is, I think Zinter might be a really, really good player. He had some injuries, but Zinter was a high recruit. He's a brawler. He's tough. I think Zinter might have been one of the Wolverines' best offensive linemen.
Well, I believe he was a player that got hurt at the national title game. I believe, and then like the entire crowd was like, Zach, the team loves him. He's a great leader in that locker room at Big Blue. let's see centers for a second, because I do think
Bo Limmer's a 6'5" center, 6'4". They list him here 300 pounds, but he did it in the SEC.
Yeah.
And he's a tough guy. He's a really tough guy. Now, Charles Turner's really, really strong from LSU. The Penn State center is supposedly pretty decent. Nick Gargulio from South Carolina is considered to be a top-tier center.
So
I
there's a
haven't
player
watched
named
every single
Hunter
one of these guys.
Norzad. Hunter Norzad
Yeah.
from Penn State. He's
right there.
High IQ, 6-year starter or 6-year player. Good athlete, good versatility, good size. Inconsistent run blocker. Like the highs are really good and the lows are like, what's going on here when you're a 6-year player at Penn State? The one thing I like about him is that he just, like, with what he does with his body, like he just get a body on somebody, get a hand. Like he'll be on his knees and he'll just put a hand up and go, I got to get contact with somebody. The issue is he cannot pick up a stunt to save his life. Now, in that same breath, thank God Aaron Donald's gone because it would be over. But you said go best player available. I agree.
Jaden Hicks is still there too, by the way.
I think Jaden Hicks is just found money if he's in the 4th round for San Francisco.
All right, we'll go Jaden Hicks at 124. And now here you are at 129. Now, this is just a matter of a lot of people feel like the Niners are going to consolidate their picks.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of a different mindset. Why? Because to me, if you go around the team, you say, okay, if you could make an ideal situation, what would it be? You know, to me, the more the merrier. I mean, like in this, I would make this move. I would move from 129 to 136 and pick up 203. There's other people that would say, oh, you don't need more picks. But to me, every one of these picks is like, it's like you could be landing Brock Purdy. It's a bite of the apple. And who cares if you have you have 1 or 2 more rookies than you want. You might get to camp and there might be an injury. So I'm kind of a believer, and I've been this way since Green Bay last won their Super Bowl, and they had like 26 guys on season-ending IR, and they still won the Super Bowl, whatever year that was, against Pittsburgh. To me, it's like depth. If you can never. It's football. I mean, you can never have enough depth. So unless there was somebody that let me see, I'll hide this. Unless there was somebody at the top of the board that I just had to have, and I just don't see it there, I would make that trade. I would trade from 129 to 136 and pick up 203.
So you'd be at what? You'd be at
132. You're picking anyway, and
then 136.
Yeah.
So you're
getting that late. Yeah, you're just it's a 2-for-1 basically. It's a 2-for-1 in the middle of the draft. To me, that's a very safe trade, and I think I would do it.
Okay, I will ride with you on this one.
All right, now we're at 132.
Right.
And you have another offer. The Ravens are offering 146 and 165 for 132 and 251. You do pick and 2 more picks. So
and I believe 251 is your last pick.
Yeah.
So there really isn't, and you pick at 215. So I believe I think we still have that pick. Let me see the offensive lineman though, because I don't want to miss out on, some interior guys that could be hits. Is Bo Limmer still there on the board?
Yes, he's the highest rated center.
I think you got to pick him. He's too good.
Okay. So Bo Limmer, now you're picking again at 135. We haven't taken a tackle. Let's see, tackle-wise, Javon Foster's still there. Garrett Greenfield's still there. Caden Wallace, Christian Jones. Those guys are there. Frank Crum, Aneem Donkwa. These guys are all still there. And I kind of think this is where this tackle, and I even like the Maryland kid, Gottlieb Ayadazi. I don't know if you saw him work out at Indy, but he's a nice prospect. They list him later, but and then I'll tell you the other kind of guy that I'm keeping my eye on is I'm a big fan of Austin Reed.
You go quarterback still?
I would. I mean, I've watched this kid Reed, and I think he's really got the goods. I mean, he was a lacrosse player. He's a 4.4 student, They say this guy just lives in the film room. He's got a lot of the same traits that Brock Purdy had. Now, I don't know that he's going to make the team, right? I don't know,
Right.
you know. Are you going to cut Brandon Allen? You're going to cut Josh Dobbs?
Right.
But this is the kind of kid that I think Sterling could look really good in the preseason and force them to cut one of those veteran quarterbacks. I really
Kind of
believe
like
that
Purdy
Reed,
was a couple years ago.
yeah, I think Reed, like, you know, a lot of people love Joe Milton. A lot of people like Michael Pratt. A lot of people like Carter Bradley. A lot of people like Sam Hartman. They're all sitting there right there. Devin Leary's got a hose.
Yeah.
Absolute hose.
So
but to me, Austin Reed is special. And so I would try to use one of these, not necessarily right here, but I would try to use a pick in the, let's see the picks here. The Niners have 135, 136, 176, 203, 211, 251. So you still have 6 picks. Probably when you get to 203, that's when I would probably consider Austin Reed. He's listed at 222 on here.
Let's look at go ahead, you're good.
No, I was just thinking, you know, at this point though, it's literally best player available, and there's some interesting guys. Javon Baker's still there. Isaiah Davis, the running back for South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits running back. He's a good-looking player.
Let's look at running backs
still
first.
there. Running backs. Okay, here we go.
I know it'll be the Kyle Shanahan and me. So
Jalen Wright. A lot of people think Jalen Wright maybe is the best back in the draft. There's Garendo, who my buddy Tony Pauline said the Niners were going to use a 3rd-round pick on. He runs in the high 4.3s from Louisville.
So,
he might be a fullback. There's Tyrone Tracy, who was a receiver, who a lot of people think a sleeper. Blake Watson's very good. My sleeper guy is this guy right here, Amani Bailey from TCU.
So I'm a big Dejon Edwards guy from Georgia.
Yeah, and I like him too. I really like him.
The one thing, and if Tony Pauline is correct in the fact that San Francisco was thinking of taking Garendo on day 2, I think Isaac Garendo, who is comped to Raheem Mostert a lot. I don't know if that's who he'll be in the NFL, but he's got 4.3 speed. He's not like out of a cannon fast. He just kind of builds up to it naturally.
Right. He wasn't even necessarily the best back on his team.
No, he wasn't, but he had 22 explosive runs on 132 carries. 6% of his carries were explosive runs this year at Louisville. It's certainly tempting, but I also do want to look at the edge rushers because I'm afraid there's going to, and we pick back-to-back, so I don't want to get too crazy here, but we do pick at 170 after this. I
mean, to me, this is incredible value. You can have Jonah Ellis or Muhammad Kamara. Sunday Anderson is interesting too. He's a little underpowered. Gabe Murphy is a good player at UCLA. And then further down the list, there's Braden McGregor is not bad. Jalen Harrell from Michigan. This kid's been everywhere and back. Ayabi Okianoma. He played at Alabama. He played at Michigan. He's played for like 4 schools, but he's a big time athlete. He might be a little bit of a troubled soul, but
so there's a player named Xavier Thomas, and it might be a little too rich for him at a Clemson. I think Dane Brugler has him going in the 5th and 6th round. The one issue with him is he has a lower leg injury, but he's super explosive when he's healthy. Good burst, relentless effort, has good feet, quick feet. Him only being 6'2" and 244 may have some questioning him, but if you're looking at Mo Kamara, who is barely 6 feet, like you could lean towards an Xavier Thomas that is a little bigger. He can play standing up, he can play sitting down. Look kind of a low floor, high ceiling kind of guy, boomer bust that could be really good for you, but also just kind of crap out. He is 25 years old, which may again concern players a little older than the average 22, 23-year-old coming out of college. I do like Xavier Thomas a lot. I took him 2 mock drafts ago on my show. I think with Kosaric, he doesn't have to be a big piece. I think he would do something that, with Floyd and Grismatos, I think he could be something. Now, you have to ask yourself, is this the area you want to take him? But I do think the Niners will have their eye towards him if he's healthy. Let's look at tight end though, because there's a lot of guys still there, and we pick back to back. So
tight end is interesting. Okay, so you have Cade Stover, Theo Johnson, Jared Wiley, Jaheim Bell, very athletic tight end, Florida State. They met with Eric Hall. I'll tell you the two guys that intrigue me the most are the next two guys.
Is it Tip?
Tanner McLaughlin from Arizona. He was a wide receiver. And if you watch this guy, he's a tremendous receiver. And then I had Baldy on, as I said, a couple weeks ago. Baldy told me that one of his personnel buddies says that Tip Reiman is far and away the best blocking tight end of any in the entire draft. He says he's the guy that you can line him up on the line of scrimmage and he will block defensive ends.
Yeah.
So there's Tip Reiman. Dallin Holker is another really intriguing player out of Colorado State. AJ Barner's of angular, tall tight end from Michigan. Isaac Rex is an interesting player. He's older. He went on his Mormon mission. But as a freshman, he led the nation with 12 receiving touchdowns. He was the number one receiving tight end. His dad played college football. He's intriguing. And then I'm a big fan of this kid, Mason Pline out of Furman. He's like 6'6". He was a basketball player. Sterling, if you watch this kid's basketball tape, he looks like Aaron Gordon. He's just like this high riser dunker guy. And he's 6'7", and he's a mechanical engineering major. He's already graduated. He's got 10.5-inch hands. Now he's not a blocker per se. You're going to have to kind of, work with him as a blocker. But you know how athletic Aaron Gordon is, and and if you're that kind of an athlete and you're a mechanical engineering major and you have 10.5-inch hands, to me, Pline is a real sleeper, but he's probably an undrafted free agent or a, round 7 guy.
So I think now, because we go back to back, I'm not super high on Theo Johnson. I know a lot of people like him. Some call him the second best tight end in the class. I don't love him that much. He's 6'6", 259 pounds, almost 260. Freak athlete. But he only had 34 catches in college this past year, which kind of concerns me. He has build-up speed, doesn't have the instant off the line speed. He's an average blocker. He has room to improve there, but he feels more like a slot, like a really big slot, than a tight end you put on the in-line, which does concern me. Like, when I think of how Shanahan likes to use tight ends, it's not what Theo Johnson does well. Cade Stover is somebody that I like. He's 6'3", almost 250. He's solid in kind of everything. He's not, excellent in anything. Reliable, good at the catch point, can play special teams. I think of the tight ends on the board, I would have them listed as Stover, Reiman, and then All as like the 3 I would point to. I know All's coming off an injury. And I think he had a torn ACL this past year. Then he hurt his back 2 years ago. So there are concerns with his health. But as a receiver, he's really good. I think I would go Tip Reiman, knowing what San Francisco likes to do. Now, the draft board might say 190, and that might scare some people away. But I just think it's either Reiman to me or an edge rusher. And I would go Xavier Thomas over Ellis or Mo Kamara, knowing the size they don't really have. So I would go with Tip Reiman here.
Okay, so now you're going back to back. So they go 135, 136. You want to go edge now?
I think that's the smartest place to go, unless there's another corner, but I don't think anyone would stand out. You already got
let's see.
You already got Phillips earlier, yeah.
Jalen Wright is a damn good running back. He's sitting right there. As far as corner, Chow Smith-Wade, great ball skills.
I think he visited today with the Niners.
Yeah, he's small. He's a 5'10" corner. He's small, but he's got great ball skills. You also have some good receivers, Cowing, Baker, Joan Ellis, good rusher. The McCaffrey's still there if you wanted to satisfy Christian at the beginning of round 5. I don't know. Kenny Logan's a thumper. Garendo's still there. Aaron Casey's a hitter at linebacker.
Do you like
Elijah
Taj
Jones?
Washington?
Elijah Jones is interesting too.
Okay.
He's a good corner from Boston College, and he's got good size, 6'1", 185, and I know they looked at him. Do I like Taj Washington? He's a good route runner.
Yeah.
I like other receivers who I think are more dynamic, but I like the route running ability. He's only 5'9", 174.
He's really tiny, but he's also super reliable. I know we're at pick 136. We don't pick until in the 170s again. I don't think there's going to be an edge rusher out there at 170 that we love. And I know it might sound nuts, but I think like Jonah Ellis, to me, the size concerns I think would detour the Niners from taking him.
They seem like they want bigger guys in the wide 9 off the end. He's like 245.
That's why I would lean towards Xavier Thomas. He's 6'2", 244. Like I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right.
So I think I go Thomas.
Okay, we'll go Thomas there. And now the thing's moving down the list. Now we are in the last pick of the 5th round, and now Minnesota's offering. This is interesting. Why would you not do this, right?
Yeah, I think I would.
You won't pick 176. Minnesota wants pick 176. They've got the next pick, and they're allowing you to move from 251 to 215. You got to do
which
that.
I think was your initial pick. You had was 215.
Right. So now you're getting you're getting your pick back, but you're only moving down one spot. You're moving down one spot at the end of the 5th round. Let's see who they take. We'll accept it. They took Gabe Hall. So there you go. So now you've got the first pick of the 6th round. And let's see. So far, just to rehash, we have Johnny Newton, defensive tackle from Illinois, Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver from Florida, Andrew Phillips, the corner from Kentucky, Jaden Hicks, a safety from Wazoo, Bo Limmer, the center from Arkansas, Tip Reiman, the tight end from Illinois, and Xavier Thomas, the edge rusher. We're still sitting here, and there's 4 picks left. They don't have a tackle.
Yeah, let's go to tackle. There's one player I have in mind. I hope he's there. And he is Christian Jones. Bang. Exactly who I wanted.
There you go. Big kid from Texas.
Yes.
Huge talent. I like Christian Jones. He looked phenomenal in the one-on-ones. I don't think that he lost any of the one-on-one battles in Mobile that I saw during the Senior Bowl practices.
Any
all right, so now you're at pick
that he has, I think, is so minor that it's like give him time in the NFL and he'll be fine.
Now you're at pick 203, and what would you like to do here? Jarvis Brownlee, the corner from Louisville, who's a Florida State transfer. He's there. Trey Taylor's a pretty good safety. Joe Milton, if you like a receiver. Dylan McMahon's not a bad offensive lineman. Edifon Olafoshio is a super fast linebacker from Washington. Oh, by the way, today the Niners met with Sione Vaki, and Vaki's agent told me that they've met with him like 7 or 8 times. He's going to join me on Friday on the Krueg Show.
Awesome.
And we're gonna chop it up. He's an Antioch kid who they've shown interest in. He was a running back who's kind of more, the Niners like him, I think, as a safety and maybe as a return man.
Yep.
But Vaki is an interesting player. He's listed at 205. They're picking at 203. His agent has kind of made it seem like it's very likely the Niners will take him. But I don't. It's your pick here, so you can pick anybody you want.
Okay.
And then
Brian
Austin Reed, that quarterback I like, is there. Aeneas Smith is an awesome player. Now I'm an A&M fan. Aeneas Smith is one of the most underrated receivers in the game. This Troy State running back, Kamani Vidal, did not fumble one time, and I think in his entire career at
Shanahan
Troy.
Love that.
He's like 5'9", like 218 pounds. Kamani Vidal. Josh Cephus Josh Cephus is a really good player too. Wide receiver. And there's Dejon Edwards. And I love Dejon Edwards, by the way. I'm a big Dejon Edwards fan. I think he's a terrific back. So there's good players here. I mean, this is like the people that say, day 3, there's, somebody in the chat's like, Larry gets too excited about day 3 guys. Oh yeah. You mean like George Kittle or Brock Purdy or DJ Jones? Or, there's a reason that Larry gets excited. Juwan Jennings. There's a reason I get excited about day 3 guys because you know what? Day 3 guys oftentimes can play, and sometimes undrafted guys can really play.
So
You know,
there is a thought in my head that Joshua Cephus in real life may go undrafted, but I really like him out of UTSA. We've gotten a tackle, we've gotten a guard. I think this is the point where, like Jaden Hicks earlier in the draft, you just pick the best player available. Um, I do want to look at edge
what
rusher
position?
again, though, just to keep an eye on it because let's see what's out there. Because we did get Xavier Thomas,
It's like
but
starting pitching in baseball. You can never have enough.
especially the
This kid
Giants.
from Grambling State is about 245, but he had a tremendous all-star game. Sunday Anderson. It's one of the kids from the historical black colleges. He's a tremendous player. Taylor Upshaw from Arizona is Regan Upshaw's son,
Okay.
who played at Cal and played with the Raiders. He's interesting. Braden McGregor is a try-hard guy for sure. Jalen Harrell had a really good year for Michigan, but he's a little bit undersized.
I think he's an off-ball linebacker rather than an edge rusher.
You think so?
I think so.
That's the list right there.
I think Gabe Murphy from UCLA is still there.
Jubinor's not bad. Gabe Murphy, I think, just went. Yeah, he went.
Gabriel Murphy at 250.
Yeah, he's. Oh, no, Gabe Murphy.
There you go.
No.
Yeah, there you go.
There he is right there. There he is. You like Gabe Murphy? He's definitely tries hard.
He doesn't have the strength that I would like. I think he was 0th percentile in arm length. So that's a big question mark. Big question mark. He doesn't have the length that would horrify me, but 77.1 77.1 run defense grade, 18.4% pass rush win rate. He's a guy that maybe you sit here and say you give him Chris Kosaric and see what he can do. I don't think they'd take him, but I do think he's worth the conversation. Had an 87.6 pass rush grade this year at UCLA. Like just undersized for sure, but
he's a twin, right?
Yeah.
Grayson and Gabe are the two Murphy brothers.
Yeah.
I think Gabe's better.
I think so too. They're very different in how they play and their skill set, but like I'm someone that doesn't think San Francisco drafts a linebacker early. We already got a cornerback, you got a safety. Like, oh man, like Jaden Cremuddy from Mississippi State. Like I like him a lot, but that's like the last pick of the draft, 51. Like I couldn't see taking him here.
Yeah.
Which brings
He's a
me
good
back
player.
to
I mean, Mississippi State, by the way, is a great defensive. I mean, Chris Jones, Simmons, Jeffrey Simmons. They probably are the two best defensive tackles in the sport. They both come out of Starkville. So Crumedy is another guy. He's big. He's athletic. I agree. He's raw, and he'd probably be a late day 3 pick. But I like him too.
Let's go with receiver. I think
receiver.
Yeah. I think
receiver's interesting. Now, Aeneas Smith, we do have a super here from Michael who says Aeneas Smith is a great pass blocking receiver, total fit for our offense. He does the dirty work well, punt returner, kick returner, special team skills too. This guy is like a legend in College Station. He really is. I mean, Aeneas Smith is he's really, really well known. I love him. I think he's a tremendous player. I think he would be a great pick. But, there are other receivers. Let's take a look.
Brian Flournoy is there, and he's 6'1", 200 pounds, 10-inch hands. He runs a 4.4. He's someone
fast.
That he probably.
And then there's other guys too. Bub Means is fast. Gold is fast from Oregon State. David White from Western Carolina is really intriguing. Big 6'4" receiver. Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint. A lot of people. I saw Rick Spielman said that he thinks he's a day 3 sleeper, and then Tyler Harrell is just a ridiculous burner. He's 200 pounds. He's not like he's a tiny guy. There's the receiver's a good spot late in this draft.
Yeah. We pick at 211. I want to get the guy that I like here.
Yeah.
And that is Joshua Cephus from UTSA.
Okay.
He's 6'3", 185. He had 547 yak yards last year. 52.1% of his yards were yak. If that doesn't scream Kyle Shanahan, I have no idea what does. He's big. He's fast. can make the first guy miss consistently. Excellent. When I talk about excellent blocker, Cephus is amazing in regards to blocking. The route tree isn't great. There are some drops here or there, but in a year where Juwan Jennings could be gone after this season, like, you have the archetype that could slide into there and maybe be something. Now, that's wishful thinking, but I think Cephus makes a lot of sense for the Niners late in this draft.
So you got Ricky Pearsall and Cephus being added to the receiving core.
Right, which
that's good. That's two good, really good players. And then you have two more picks, 211 and 215. Let's see. I'll tell you one guy that I absolutely love, and I think he's still on the board. Let's see if he's there. Well, first of all, Vaki's there. We'll see. The linebacker that I love is this kid, Kalen DeLoach. I love Kari Coleman from Ole Miss and Kalen DeLoach from Florida State. DeLoach is more of a sub-package monster, but we're talking about a linebacker who's about 215 pounds, who, this guy's got high character. When Florida State got left out of the playoffs, most of their players tucked tail and got out of there and didn't show up for the bowl game. This kid did. And he runs 4.47, and he's a linebacker. As I said, he's a sub-package linebacker. But him and Kari Coleman from Ole Miss, I think, are two outstanding sub-package linebackers. But what do you think? I mean, 211, 215. Is there a spot besides, linebacker that you're looking for or want me to highlight here?
Yeah, so I think these are the two spots in my last mock draft where I picked Cromartie from Mississippi State. And then after that went Tatum Bethune from Florida State,
who they also just brought in.
Right, and Bethune is someone that he's 6 foot, 200 and almost 30 pounds. He had a 30.0 passer rating when targeted last season at Florida State. And I think Johnny Holland said, if you can cover, we'll take you. And there's a reason as to why they want to talk to him and visit with him. Like, his coverage skills are stellar. He has 4.69 speed, which isn't phenomenal, but as a linebacker, he can chase down a receiver if he has to at times. He was also asked to play pass rusher at some times, which don't understand why, but he's really good in zone coverage. I think he would fit with San Francisco's defensive scheme once out of their linebackers. I wouldn't go quarterback. You can maybe sell me on running back here. Is Edwards still there from Georgia?
Yes. Day one Edwards, Imani Bailey, they're all there. Kamani Vidal.
I think
some good running backs. Dylan Johnson from Washington, who's 220 pounds, and he didn't play in the national championship game because he was hurt, but he is a terrific back too.
So I think I would go with the money pick. And I know Austin Jones is there in San Francisco. Has talked to him a couple of times. Was at the pro day. I think you were there.
I interviewed him at the pro day too, and he started at Stanford, went to SC, but I don't think he's quite on the level of Dejon Edwards, to be honest.
So there's Michael Wiley there, who's I know is buried, but of the guys on the board still, Edwards is 5'10", 207 pounds. Workhorse, ran a 4.7, which isn't very fast, but averaged 5.4 yards a carry at Georgia. His last two seasons, not just last season, last two seasons at Georgia. 20 touchdowns and just 2 fumbles when he was there. I would take Edwards here and give you a 5th running back in that room.
I like that one. Dejon Edwards, he's fast enough. I'm never really too worried about the 40 times on these guys when they're running backs, when they're productive in the SEC. You know what I mean? It's the guy's fast enough.
The biggest knock on him is he's not a great pass blocker, which could piss Kyle Shanahan off a lot. But I think you can avoid that with him, and he probably wouldn't play in the first 2 years of his career anyways, knowing Kyle. But let's see what else.
So here we are, 215, and there's still a lot of good players on the board. Yeah. I mean, a lot of good players on the board.
Cromartie's still there from Mississippi State. Vaki's still there from Utah.
I mean, Logan Lee was a good player at Iowa. I'm not sure how it's going to translate to the NFL, but he was a very good player. Aeneas Smith, Vidal, a lot of Cromartie. Cromartie's a big. He's a big boy. I mean, we're talking about and he's got movement ability. And talking about 300 pounds. I mean, he's intriguing. He really is.
Cromartie's 6'4", 301, round 6'3", 33-inch arms, 10.5-inch hands. He's raw, but he's got the body you'd want to play on the interior. When I think of the Niners' interior defensive line, we already got Newton, and we have Hargrave. Malik Collins is there probably for a year. Jordan Elliott's there. Who knows for how long? Then you have Gibbons.
Jordan Elliott had great numbers against the run last year. I think he was the sixth best defensive tackle in the league against the run.
He did.
That was pretty impressive.
Then Clea Davis is there, who I know many people have high hopes for, but he's always hurt.
But I'm not. It hasn't happened yet. I mean, It's like, how many more opportunities is he going to get? And then Givens was Cadillacing right next to Chase Young in the NFC Championship game. So I don't know how much you can depend on him. Crumedy, you can never have enough defensive linemen. That's for sure.
And if you told me you walked away with arguably on some people's big boards the best defensive tackle in the entire class, and then at the last pick of what you have to play with, you got Crumedy, who again is 6'4", 301 pounds, which can at least fill space and take up a body. He's raw, but you give him Chris Kosaric. What could that become? I would like that. I like those prospects much more than Kalia Davis was 2 years ago. I like it much more than previous picks they've had in the past. I think Crumedy would be, I don't want to say a steal, but he would certainly be someone you point to and say, wow, how did the NFL let Crumedy fall that far to San Francisco?
I mean, just on, when you watch him, you can see he's there's upside there. I mean, he's got quick feet. He probably needs to get in a little bit better shape, but I mean, there's a lot to like there. All right, let's go Jaden Crumedy there, and that will finish us off in the mock. And now it goes through the end of the draft. And, there's always the ability to sign guys after the draft, and there's some damn good guys on the board. So I would imagine that the Niners will be very competitive for some of those guys. But let's recap it. We started with Johnny Newton at 31, came back with Ricky Pearsall, the wide receiver out of Florida, at 63, went with the corner at 108, Jaden Hicks, the safety thumper, at 124, went with Bo Limmer, who I think could be a starter at center, maybe even as soon as this year, at 132. Got the best blocking tight end in the entire draft at 135. Xavier Thomas is an edge that you really like. I've got to watch film on him, but at 136. You went offensive tackle with Christian Jones, who's, big, huge bodied guy with a lot of athleticism coming out of a big program. That's a nice one. Josh Cephus, a really talented receiver, at 203. Dejon Edwards, the running back from Georgia, at 211. And then defensive tackle, once again, Crumedy at 215. I like it, man. I think it's a good looking mock. How do you feel about it?
I feel good. I mean, there's a lot of players in the mock like Limmer, Phillips, and Jones, and Crumedy that I've taken a lot in previous mocks of my own. So I'm comfortable with those guys. I'm sure you have it as well. I have 110 prospects on my phone ready to go to talk about. So when I see these guys, I'm just like, yes, yes, yes. Seeing this mock, and if this happens to occur next week, I would like to believe the Niners, which they already are probably the best roster in the NFL, but they would leave saying, sure, you could have got an edge rusher or a tackle earlier, and there's always this, that, and the other, but the talent on the board that we've taken that fell to us or we stole from somebody else, I think there's plentiful talent on this board.
The only thing that I would consider doing, this guy says Tyler Harrell ran 4.24 at his pro day. Jeez. Yeah, he's a burner. There's no question. And we'll see if he gets drafted. But the only thing that I would be on the lookout to do that we didn't do because it's not really available to us in this mock draft is that the Niners are one of 3 teams that was rumored to be interested in a trade for Budda Baker.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they can afford Budda Baker. I don't know. How do you tell Aiyuk we don't have enough money and, somehow pay Brock what he's due and then wind up with Budda Baker? But, man, Budda Baker is such a difference maker. The Eagles re-signed Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I thought that was a great addition for them. I think Baker, in a lot of ways, would be the perfect secondary piece for the Niners. From what I'm hearing, his salary is going to make it so that the Cardinals probably wind up moving him for a 5th or a 6th round draft choice on draft weekend.
Okay.
And I know there's a contract involved and he makes, a sizable amount of money, but that would be the one, if there's one thing I could do beyond what we just did, if I could figure out a way to get Budda Baker and maybe not take a safety, you know what I mean? And use that pick on somebody else, or use the pick that you're going to, somehow trade for a Budda Baker. To me, that could make a very good draft elite if they could find a way to add that kind of playmaker on the back end. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's cap reasonable and that kind of thing. But the Niners, the Colts, and there was a third team that were all interested in Budda Baker, according to CBS Sports about 10 days, 2 weeks ago. That's the one guy that I'd be like, you know what? Because I've talked to George Kittle about Budda Baker, and, we all know what kind of player Budda Baker is. He could be that alpha that they're looking for in their secondary to kind of get them over the top. And if he's available and they can make it work cap-wise, man, I would do it.
If they're going all in, do whatever it takes. That's all I got to say. Do whatever it takes.
Awesome stuff, Sterling. Thanks I'm going to stop sharing right here and get us back on the board here. But thanks for coming on, man. Once again, tease your channel. Tell people where they can find you. There were a lot of people here in the chat. Somebody who said this is the best mock you've done. And I love, to me, this time of year, it is interesting to see who can really, truly get granular on something like the NFL draft. Most people can't, and some people brag about the fact that they can't. But to me, it's really a good indicator of what kind of depth you have as a host when you can talk about options in the 6th round of the NFL draft and actually have something meaningful to share with the audience. So tell people where they can find your show and how often you stream. And everybody, we got over 1,000 people in the room right now. Everybody, if you would, do me a favor, do me a solid. If you hit like and subscribe over here on the Krueg Show, we would appreciate that. Go over to Sterling's channel and give him a like and subscribe over on his channel and help build him to 40,000 subs. That would be really cool. But
great.
tell people, what kind of content you put out. And is it, you're talking not just Niners, right? Niners, Warriors, Giants, Bay Area sports, right?
Oh, no, we are full on red and gold till the day we go. It's Niners every single week.
Oh, it's all
every single
Niners.
day. All Niners. We are 49ers access. That's all we're talking over there. Again, just released the quote-unquote most accurate mock draft, which some picks occurred in this mock draft as well. So we're talking Niners every single day with every single week. Again, you can find me at 49ers Access on YouTube, on Twitter or X is 49ers_access. Instagram is 49ers.access. Again, you just type in 49ers Access. You will find me somewhere in the ether on the internet.
Last question before we call it quits. Is there a player that we did not mock to the Niners and that you just love? Everybody's got like one or two guys that it's like, what? It didn't work out. It wasn't the right number. It wasn't the right need, this and that. But I am absolutely convinced that this player is going to be super special. Who's that guy for you?
I know we talked about Michael Hall earlier. That's a player that he kind of gets buried behind Newton and Murphy. I know Tavondre Sweat has his off the field issues, but I could see him being a 3rd round pick to somebody, probably Kansas City, maybe the Cowboys, maybe the Raiders, teams that don't mind some personal issues off the field. I love me some Michael Hall, but Mo Kamara, we also mentioned, he doesn't fit what the Niners want to do, but Mo Kamara is just awesome. In 5 years at Colorado State, he had 45.5 tackles for losses, 30.5 sacks, and 5 forced fumbles. You talk about production. He's the epitome of production. I don't know what he'll be in the NFL, but if that size doesn't play a factor for him, Mo Kamara could be really special. And I'm really excited to see what he does at the next level.
Yeah, I love Mo Kamara. Kind of reminds me of Hugh Douglas.
Okay.
Yeah, remember Hugh Douglas back in the day. For me, it's Blake Corum. I just
love him.
The more I watch Blake Corum, the more I think, you know what? This kid has got the footwork, the explosion, the power, the speed, the character. To me, he reminds me a lot of Emmitt Smith, in that Emmitt Smith was absolutely this high character running back for the Dallas Cowboys. He kind of was the heart and soul of that dynasty. They had Aikman and they had Irvin and Novacek and athletes on defense and Jimmy Johnson and Eric Williams. And they had other guys. But Emmitt was kind of like the heart and soul of that dynasty. And I think Blake Corum reminds me of Emmitt in that he scores tons of touchdowns. He's great in short yardage. He's got quick feet. He's just, he's this great charitable guy, but he's also this incredible gotcha kind of a competitor. I love Blake Corum, and I know people are like, the Niners don't need another third-round running back, and I don't even know if he'll make it to the third round, and you can't take him in the second round if you're the 49ers, if you have Christian McCaffrey, but I love Blake Corum, and if they somehow wound up with Blake Corum, I would be doing absolute cartwheels. I just see him as a truly great difference-making back who's going to be wearing a Super Bowl ring someday. So there you go. And I love Kamara too, and I love Michael Hall. Those are all great ones. But for me, Blake Corum just seems like, I don't know. To me, there's something really special about that player. And he's from a tiny town in Virginia, and who knows? Some people feel like he's an overrated player, that he was, kind of shown to be better than he was behind a Michigan offensive line that has multiple guys that are going to be drafted, and J.J. McCarthy and, all the talent they had on that roster. But I kind of see him as the key to the glue piece of the Wolverines. And if, when he goes, I'll be like, and I really hope he doesn't go to somebody really good, because I just to me, he seems like the kind of guy that's going to wear Super Bowl rings. Awesome stuff, Sterling. Great stuff, man. We appreciate it. Maybe after the draft, we can get you back on and kind of review what the Niners did and look ahead to training camp. But thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Thanks to our sponsors, Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California, Marin Auto Glass, Underdog Fantasy, and Sharp Corners, sports cards, and collectibles. For Sterling Bennett, I'm Larry Krueger. Have a great night, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of.